Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy BDELL. If you're new to this channel, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. Now, everything that you see taking place right now within the factions of the tyrannical dystopian system coincides with the societal, geopolitical, economic reset that's going to be facilitated by World War III, which is why you see the United Nations mobilizing for world dominance. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the final stages of the Great Awakening. So get those notes out, because this video is going to expose a lot of things that a lot of people have been wondering about. So one thing you got to understand about this Great Awakening period, the Great Awakening period is predicated upon the fact that this is the final reset, because it's going to force you into an awakening period, meaning that it's going to be very uncomfortable for those who were basically indoctrinated by the illusions of lies, right? Because one thing you also got to understand, you cannot negate the fact that they built this infrastructure basically coincides with international violation rules that basically goes against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. When we get into this publication right here by the United Nations, so it tells you that the United Nations is basically mobilizing for global governance. And this global governance is predicated upon the fact that you got Iran's president is basically preparing for a new world order system that's basically about to take place. And the reason that is because you got people, all these moguls and these CEOs, they're preparing for something that's very big. So they're preparing for a major war, and they're preparing for another, pretty much another lockdown. So then when you go to this publication right here, it says the United States lawmakers plan for a possible mass casualty event, proposing for a constitutional amendment to replace members quickly and change various lines of succession in a national crisis. Right? So now I'm going to get into this video because it's very important that we look at this from a meticulous level. So in this video, it's basically going to be telling you about the reality about the mobilization process of the United Nations. So I'm going to play this video. So get your notes out for this video and pay attention to everything that they basically saying. Everything that was basically propagated as a so-called conspiracy is being propagated in real time in the mass media.
Country, and like many other issues, we're going to be deciding on November 5 what kind of a country we're going to be, and it applies to this issue as well. President Trump had withdrawn the U.S. from the WHO, and of course the Biden administration, like every other disastrous decision they made, reversed those policies when the Biden-Harris administration got in charge. Well, later this week, the UN is going to hold a, quote, summit for the future, and they're going to produce, this is right from their website, an intergovernmentally negotiated, action-oriented pact for the future with a chapter on transforming global governance. Ascending beyond the powers being sought by its subordinate agency, the WHO, the UN is seeking even broader and more powerful authority, as you will hear a lot about today. The Biden-Harris administration apparently intends to fully support the surrender and compliance of the U.S. to the UN in these endeavors. They are aligned with...
So this is basically in alignment to the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, the agenda for 2030, which is why you have the Biden and the Kamala factions of the deep state shadow government working in synergy with the United Nations and the World Health Organization. So it's one of those things where they create a form of destabilization to basically get order out of chaos, to control people, that's based upon the factions of a democratic dictatorship, basically.
With the international globalists that hate America, that hate the Constitution, that hate our founders, that hate our founding Judeo-Christian principles, and they want America to become like the rest of the world. They don't want us to be subordinate to or governed by our Constitution. No, they want America to be subordinate to and governed by the UN, the World Health Assembly, and the WHO. And in fact, they intend to join with others at the UN summit this week to vote to award additional powers to the UN Secretary General. They seek to facilitate the evolution of the UN from an international cooperative body to an international governing body. These powers would be triggered by any one of a number of so-called global emergencies, whether it was a so-called climate emergency, a health emergency, a cyber emergency, or a gun violence emergency.
But then you also cannot negate the fact that, these government factions, they held a simulation for Cyber Polygon on September 11th. So that also coincides with everything that he's talking about in this video.
That's supposed to be a financial emergency or whatever they deem appropriate. And the Biden-Harris administration is in full agreement with the UN and the WHO on efforts to place us under their authority and to require such things as their international health regulations, including the surveillance of U.S. citizens, the censoring of dissenting views, and much more. The American people didn't vote for this, and they don't support this. And it's up to the people's representatives, that's us gathered here today, to have a responsibility to expose this and to reject this. The U.S. should defund the WHO again. We should withdraw from the WHO. Any agreements with the WHO or the UN should require Senate approval or disapproval. And a bipartisan House majority voted to require Senate approval just last week with Tom Tiffany's bill on the House floor. So I'm proud to be joined here by my House colleagues and others who are appropriately concerned and educated, informed, and leading on this issue. Again, this is the most important issue that's getting the least amount of attention relative to its importance and its impact on our country and on the American people. And with that, I yield to the gentleman from South Carolina, Ralph Norman.
Thanks, Congressman Good. I want to thank Frank Gaffney, Tony Perkins, all my colleagues for...
Here's another thing. I know a lot of people, in order to get an intuitive understanding about everything that's taking place, you got to get through videos like this. So don't get, call yourself getting bored, you know what I'm saying, just because, you're not understanding, the mechanics of everything that they're basically saying in this video, because it basically translates into everything that's taking place right now. So with that being said, this video basically denotes the fact that it's about to go down, right? Everything that we've been talking about, since from 2017 all the way up until now, it's about to go down. So pay attention to this video, please. Get this video out there, subscribe to the channel, get this video out there.
Lead role in this. As Congressman Good said, this is probably, other than our financial crisis this country's in, the most important issue to call attention to. The Summit of the Future will happen on September 22nd, 23rd. And folks, what that will do is cede America's authority, America's sovereignty to basically China. China is defined as a developing country. It is the number 2 economy behind America. It's not developing. It will cede our decision-making ability to China. That's what you need to know. Let me read out what the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, his policy brief 2, issued on March of 2023. I propose that the General Assembly provide the Secretary General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale. Guess who determines that? The World Health Organization. It reveals in their definition a possible global shock, including large-scale climate or environmental events, determined by who? The Secretary General.
See, they telling you something's about to happen. They telling you right in your face on national television. None of this shit is a conspiracy. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
Future pandemics. We all endured what the problem we had with the latest virus. high impact events, involving a biological agent determined by who? The World Health Organization. Disruption of global flows of goods determined by who? Not America, but the WHO under the Secretary General. Not only that, it requires a 5% payment by the United States every year of our total medical dollars spent, which are in the trillions. Bottom line, we cannot let this go. This is a top line issue that America must be made aware of. It's got to go through the Senate where it requires 60 votes. And we're going to fight to make sure all Americans know what's happening and stop it dead in its tracks. The WHO needs to be defunded, needs to be we need to do away with it, and America get out of it. I now call on Frank Gaffney with the Sovereignty Coalition.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to all of those present. I wanted to most especially thank those who voted last week for H.R. 1425, which did exactly what Congressman Norman just talked about, requires the United States Senate to advise and, I hope, dissent on the kind of surrender of our sovereignty to global government that is envisioned both with respect.
So like I said, they're breaking international violation rules, right? Because it coincides with their perceptions of the eugenic system, which is a form of westernized ethnic cleansing that goes against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this is the crimes against humanity that they're propagating by way of the United Nations that works in tandem with FEMA. All these factions is coming from the deep state.
World Health Organization, and with respect now to the UN. That's, make no mistake about it, the agenda of the UN Summit of the Future. That is unmistakably what they hope to put in train with their so-called Pact of the Future. And the thing that is absolutely infuriating about all of this is not only, as these gentlemen have said, this is really important. And most people in the media, most people in government, certainly the vast majority of Americans have no idea this is even going on, let alone.
Like I said, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
In the rest of us. So it seems to me that what is needed now is not only to have the Senate charged, as with the World Health Organization's International Health Regulation Treaty, also the Pact for the Future. There must be no application of whatever they come up with in terms of world government by the UN Secretary General without the Senate's advice and consent. And secondly, I call here today on former President Donald Trump to use his platforms to address and draw out his opponent, the Vice President of the United States, on whether or not she supports world government. And if she doesn't, for her to disavow what the Biden administration is doing right now to try to bring it about. Thank you very much. Next up.
See, this is why, like I said, the United Nations is mobilizing for world dominance by way of global governance. And that's going to turn America into a police state, which is basically a totalitarian dictatorship, right? So what you're witnessing right now is the fall of America. And the fall of America is propagated by the three city-states of Washington, D.C., who controls the military, the Vatican, who controls the spiritual aspect of monotheistic religion, and then you got the city of London, who controls the financial infrastructure of the vetted simulation of reality. So these city-states are, in fact, privately incorporated, which is basically an independent, autonomous system, which basically goes against the crimes, for humanity. They have their own separate laws. They have their own separate entities. And that none of these factions, they pay taxes. So it's everything that you see right now is illegal. That's why everything has to go through a economic reset by way of the socio-political aspect of civics and the societal and geopolitical reset. So this is why you see, in September, this was filmed, and you got all these fences and everything, blocked off, because the corporate jurisdiction of the three city-states is shut down. This is why they're trying to amplify the United Nations, right? By that's basically connected to the factions of democracy and the deep state and liberalism and things of that nature. Now, this proves my point. Me and Ryan Hayes been telling you this whole time that the White House is shut down. Washington, D.C. is basically closed down. All these factions of the three city states is shut down. So when you look at this picture right here, this side was filmed in Atlanta at Tyler Perry Studios. The stadium in the background was the former Turner Stadium that was used by the Atlanta Braves and now is used by the Georgia State University. So what you're seeing right now, this is the fake White House at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. Now I'm going to show you something because you can see the mobilization of all the political leaders look like they're getting ready to speak because they cannot put, these democratic ideologies in the forefront like they used to, because you can't have a democracy inside of a matriarchal order that's supposed to be facilitated by a republic, which is for the people. Democracy in itself is of the jurisdiction of the United States government, who controls United States citizens. So I'm going to show you. Now you got Quincy, one of P. Diddy's sons. It shows you right here in the background, it has the same monolithic structure on top of the building. It's the same building. He's in Atlanta at Tyler Perry's studios. See right here in the background where my cursor is right here. It's the same building. So what you're seeing right now is a stage show because these three city states of the corporate system has lost its power, right? Which is why the deep state shadow government is starting to mobilize with the United Nations to create this cybernetic dictatorship that coincides with the sustainable development goals of Agenda for 2030, right? So everything that you're seeing right now is a process. It's a process of destabilization. Now, the reason why the White House is shut down is because a lot of these so-called, freak off parties and stuff like that, a lot of them was held in the tunnel systems of the White House when you're talking about P. Diddy and all these politicians and these celebrities in Hollywood. So this publication tells you about the White House, the secret NOD underground installation, which is connected to the intelligence groups like NSA and the CIA, as well as many other nefarious groups lays under the White House, with tunnels connecting this NOD installation with the House of the Temple. The Supreme Council of the 33 degrees of the Scottish Rites House of the Temple of 14 by 25 room with 13 chairs where the Illuminati Grand Druid Council meet. The NOD deep underground installation has numerous levels to it. One eyewitness, level 17 via elevator, stated that he believes there's deeper levels. So this coincides with a thing that Dr. York put inside of his publication, where they have the Nightmare Hall, where they have these eugenic systems, and when they do hybrid breeding experiments with many different, entities and other species and things of that nature. And they have these freak-offs down there. And this is where a lot of evil things took place. The dark net has it all there. And I know these politicians have to be nervous about what is going to be exposed. So now this just came out today. And it says, breaking, the personal information of over 3,000 congressional staffers and workers in D.C. leaked across the dark web in a massive cyber attack, right? So everything that you're seeing right now, the exposing process, is part of the process of the final great awakening stages. You're going to be forced to wake up because everything's got to get exposed. You're going to be forced to understand everything intuitively. And it's going to be very uncomfortable because it's going to contradict the indoctrination that you were basically consumed by, for the last 40, 50, 30 years that you've been living on this planet. Now, as I was telling you before, they built their whole system that's based on witchcraft, that is being engineered by the Guild of the European Companies, which operates on corporate internal codes, which is basically commercial law that works in tandem with the governmental ordinance departments. And these governmental ordinance departments is basically a faction that controls the executive, judicial, and legislative branches, which basically puts a jurisdiction of the United States government that basically eradicated the whole aspect of the matriarch. So this creates civil unrest and civil disputes within the factions of their constitutional uh, laws and rights and immunities. So everything that you see right now, this system that they built is a form of witchcraft, right? It's a form of witchcraft, which is why on the dollar they say that in God we trust. In God we trust is the governmental ordinance departments, which works in tandem with the social security, where you have QSIP numbers, where you have community uniform security identification procedures, and those QSIP numbers is connected to the Federal Reserve notes, which is basically a debt note because they have trade derivatives on Wall Street. So it has a form of equilibrium. So all this is basically a form of witchcraft. They built their system on witchcraft, which is why these factions, as I was telling you, of the three city states, it has to fall. It has to fall because we at the final stages of the Great Awakening period, which is why they're trying to propagate the United Nations in mass media, right? So this is why you have a government within a government fighting within the government. You have the white hats versus the black hats. The white hats are basically neutral. The black hats are the ones as what you call the black nobility or the deep state shadow government. For those who don't understand the diametrical differences between the two. Now, everything has to go through a reset. And the reason I say that is because when you go to the fourth book of Ezra, from 2024 to 2027, it's going to be very much, troubling times, because the troubling times is predicated upon the fact that the planet and America has to go through a reset process. And the reason it has to go through a reset process because it coincides with the mechanics of the supplication process. Because during that time period, in the old timeline, we were basically civilly dead in the eyes of law. We were cut off due to the lack of knowledge, and we were basically the bottom feeders of planet Earth because we were afflicted by the indoctrination programs, which made us mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially poor. Now everything has to, revert back into its original state. When you go to Job chapter 8, verse 7, it says right here that in the latter days, should greatly increase. So in the last days of the timeline of the final Great Awakening period, from 2024 to 2027, and this is where you're going to get a restoration process, a supplication process, right? So now, picture basically denotes the fact that they built their system upon witchcraft, which is basically the Luciferian blueprint of the sigil of the Infernal Union. So this sigil that you see basically puts an encryption over the planet. So I may do a video on it. This is just my opinion. I really believe that there's a firmament, not just over the planet, but there's a firmament over the geographical landmass of America. That's just my opinion. Because when you look at this encryption, it basically subjugates the energies by way of geomancy with these ley line grid systems, right? So what you're looking at right now is, like I said, they do rituals and things of that nature. But like I said, the system has to go through a reset. It has to reset because this system has reached the apex of the wickedness on the planet. So what you're looking at is the Luciferian meanings of the sigil of the Infernal Union. As you can see that there is no negativity, but there is a polarity that coincides with this system. So that basically means that everything in your everyday life is based upon a sacrifice or a ritual, everything that they did. So all this stuff is acclimated to, monotheistic religion. So this is why, Mel Gibson, he said verbatim that the pastors is in on it. Mel said that they stole Christianity from the Ethiopian Bible and changed everything to European. He also said that Western countries didn't want Yahweh to be known as a person of color and created Jesus. And now he's hiding for breaking the truth, right? So, there's a catch-22 when it comes to that, because like I said, I don't really subscribe to Yahweh in the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, because Yahweh coincides with Enlil when you look at, the Bible from a monotheistic standpoint, and when you break down the etymology of certain factions within those publications. So what I'm basically telling you is, everything they built in this system is witchcraft. This is a Luciferian system. It's an inverted lifestyle that basically puts an encryption over the planet, right? So this is, like I said, this is why the 3 city states that controls the governmental ordinance departments, it all has to fall. This is why they push in the United States agenda for global governance, right? For world dictatorship. It's not a coincidence that all this stuff is happening because it's happening because these 3 systems has failed. Because you're looking at the fall of America, right? Because this is the final great awakening, like I was telling you. It's about that time. Share this video. Get those likes up. Hit the subscribe button. This video is very important because it's going to put a lot of things in perspective. So everything that they built in their system is witchcraft. The religion was witchcraft, right? So now, hold on for a second. So now, hold on for a second. So October marks the beginning of the new fiscal year for many organizations, leading to budget relocations, layoffs, and strategic pivots. We are heading towards the historic events that will change the course of our history and country forever. And the deep state shadow governments know that there's no going back from this point because, like I said, we're going through reset. So expect them to throw everything at us. When you're talking about many different Black Swan events, all these orchestrated events that's going to be taking place within the planet in between now and 2025 and so on and so forth, as we go into the year of for the agenda for 2030 with the sustainable development goals. So everything that they got to do is got to happen right now, right? During the harvest season, because they got to harvest our energy in order to facilitate that process. So, and because for them, our future is going to be their end. The chosen ones. The chosen ones must take back the planet. The true people of the planet, the organic ones, the organic souls who are basically going to be leading the next world, the free world, right? And they don't want you to make an opportunity to remove them from this planet forever. So be prepared for anything and everything. Nothing to fear, nothing to run from. As I told you in the last video, the house of cards must fall, right? So prepare, especially during October 1st, that is going to be the precursor to the timeline shift for the ages. Now, when we get into the factions of the music industry and all these industries, not just the music industry, the political industry, the music industry, Hollywood and things of that nature, everything has to be exposed, right? So now we're going to get into the Diddy list. You know what I'm saying? Everything that's taking place when, these parties where he's greasing everybody up with all the baby oil and things of that nature, we finna get straight to it. Now, here's a list of the Diddy party list, his invite list. These celebs below may be getting subpoenaed in the Diddy case. So you got Burna Boy, Kevin Hart, Naomi Campbell, Justin Bieber, Alicia Keys, Janelle Monáe, Dwayne Wade, Snoop Dogg, Jennifer Lopez, Shaquille O'Neal, Tracy Ellis Ross, Lizzo. You got Demi Lovato, Drake, Malama, Usher, Rick Ross, DJ Khaled, Sierra, Oprah Winfrey, Jelani Hogue, Meg Thee Stallion, Mark Wahlberg, Drea, Issa Rae, Swiss Beats, Gabrielle Union, Winnie Harlow, Diplo, French Montana, Kelly Rowland, Chris Brown, Lil Uzi Vert, Paris Goebel, Snoop Dogg, D Nice, and Lear Cohen, who owns the great majority of these record companies. So now I'm gonna show you how all this stuff works in tandem with everything that took place with the cyber attack when they basically got exposed to 3,000 documents and copies and videos to the dark web. So it says right here verbatim that Chris Brown, Usher, and Nicki Minaj is said to be on the tape P. Diddy sold on the dark web for $500 million. We also know that Oprah Winfrey was named by Ali Carter to be one of the person who abused her and gave her to the powerful people to do so. Jaguar Wright also stated that Dwayne Wade was using his own son at these Diddy parties, basically, at his mansion. Because despite of what's going on, P. Diddy, the silence has never been so loud with these celebrities who are not speaking out for any of the people who were named as these victims in the court documents. So one thing you got to read is the Homeland Security document about the P. Diddy case, because it tells you about the politicians who went. It tells you about all these celebrities in Hollywood who went, all the rappers who were there. So now I told you, like I said, everything has to get exposed. So these tapes is about to come out because like when you read right here, it says the dark web for 500 million. And it's said to be Chris Brown, Usher, and Nicki Minaj on the tape. It was sold on the dark web for 500 million. Now when we go all the way up to the top. Now when we go all the way back up. Now it says breaking personal information of over 3,000 congressional staffers and workers, DC leaked across the dark web. So you mean to tell me they ain't gonna release the tapes? You know what I'm saying? All this stuff is happening right now is divine timing because the planet must go through a supplication process, a purification process by way of truth and exposing. Everything got to be exposed. Right? So that's the Diddy list. And the reason that is, you know, you could say that all this stuff is a distraction and things of that nature. And I'm going to prove it in this video because there's a video that coincides with everything that's taking place right now. And a lot of these celebrities are in military tribunals and things of that nature. I'm going to play this video for you.
Tribunals were taking place, and all of those people were charged, tried, found guilty, executed. The whole program was recorded for later release to the people. So what's going to happen is, over time, bit by bit, those trials will be released. The video recordings of those trials will be released to the people, but it'll be done as if it's real time because the truth of what is coming out is so devastating. If it all came out at once, the people would either reject it or go into psychotic shock. Either way, it doesn't help.
He said that if everything was to be released within the factions of the political industry, the music industry, Hollywood, all these celebrities, if everything was to be released all at one time right now, the people would either reject it or they would go into shock. So this is why they got to give everything out in increments. It's not because it's a process that must take place with the final great awakening. We in that time right now. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Get this video out there, man. This is important. I'm going to play it back a little bit.
Tribunals were taking place, and all of those people were charged, tried, found guilty, executed. The whole program was recorded for later release to the people. So what's going to happen is, over time, bit by bit, those trials will be released. The video recordings of those trials will be released to the people, but it'll be done as if it's real time because the truth of what is coming out is so devastating. If it all came out at once, the people would either reject it or go into psychotic shock. Either way, it doesn't help. So unfortunately, it has to be spoon-fed slowly over time. If this happens too quickly, then the black hats win. If chaos comes out, the black hats win. If the economic collapse lasts too long, the black hats win. If the people become violent in an organized sense, the black hats win. So we have to be very measured, and we have been.
See, when you're talking about the diametrical differences between the black hats and the white hats, see, the white hats, I'm going to show you a publication that basically, you know, I got to show you so you can get the clarity on it. So we're going to get into that later. So that's basically talking about the York right and the Scottish right going against each other. That's all he's basically talking about. There's a government within the government fighting against the government. But at the same time, like I said, there's no such thing as a left wing or right wing. You know what I'm saying? You got left lane, right lane, and they have the same destination. One lane might be slower, the other lane might be faster, but they have one destination, and that destination is the lead to destruction, excuse me. So now when we get into the esoteric aspects of Diddy's freak offs and these parties, now notice he's the only one that's wearing red. right? See right here, Diddy wearing red in all his parties. Again, he's wearing red. He's the only one that's wearing red. Why? Because when you got to understand is that when you wear red to freak off ritualistic parties, that is basically denoting the fact that it's the symbology of him being a Luciferian priest. You got to watch this movie called Eyes Wide Shut. As you can see, there's a part in the movie. This is a ritualistic party, and it was a freak off at the mansion. But the Luciferian priest, he was the only one that was wearing red, just like P. Diddy wears red at his parties. Because P. Diddy was a vessel for the hedonistic activity within the factions of Hollywood. He was a Luciferian priest, and he was basically hijacked by an entity called Div. When we get into later on in the presentation, I'm going to break that down. So what you're seeing right now taking place, he's a Luciferian priest at these freak-off parties, right? Everything that they built within their system is all ritualistic. Celebrities, politicians, all these people was at these parties, right? And you got to watch this movie called Eyes Wide Shut. And the guy who basically put out this movie, Stanley Kubrick, he was basically unalive for putting this movie out because it basically gave you the real about what took place behind the scenes in Hollywood, what took place behind the scenes in all these industries, right? So watch this movie called Eyes Wide Shut. So when you go to these freak off parties and all these rituals, the Luciferian priest, he's the one who wears red because he's the one that's basically in control, right? He is basically the organizer and the curator of these parties. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit into the fact that remember when Aaron Carter about 2 years ago, he was talking about how the so-called Illuminati was after him, right? Because he was basically exposing a lot of stuff on his TikTok. So rumors are circulating that Aaron Carter was killed right before he was about to expose what happened at P. Diddy's trafficking parties, where he saw a child victim, where he was a child victim of drug abuse and the R word. And Aaron Carter released albums under Sony Music Group Entertainment, which is basically a parent of Bad Boy Records that was being controlled by P. Diddy. Now, with all this stuff taking place, I'm assuming that the great majority of people that's stepping down went to these Diddy parties. T.D. Jakes is stepping down. Lucien Grange stepping down. Howard Schultz stepping down. John Paul, Kevin Lowndes, John G. Taft, Larry Page, Yokihishu Nato, Ruth Handler, Ronald Perlman. All these people are basically stepping down. And I'm assuming that they went to these Diddy parties. And then you have Meek Mill talking about why all these CEOs stepping down like you don't know. You was one of the ones that was getting greased up too at the Diddy party. So I don't know why he's trying to do this process of reverse psychology like we don't understand what's going on. We know you was at them Diddy parties and we know you on them tapes too. So then it tells you right here that all these people, stepped down within 24 hours of P. Diddy's arrest. All these people, all these CEOs, because it all works in tandem with the corporate powers of the three city states, the Vatican, Washington, D.C., London. All this stuff works in conjunction when you're talking about the factions, because now, like I said, this is the final great awakening, so everything's got to get exposed. Everybody's got to step down because they lost their power. Nike CEO stepped down. Now we're going to get into the esoteric aspects of what Bad Boy is, and and how it works in conjunction with these Freemasonic secret societal groups. So Bad Boy is basically the symbology of the Royal Order of Jesters, right? And the Royal Order of Jesters is a ritualistic group that's connected to Freemasonry. So which is why the Mirth is King. Mirth is King. That is basically working in synergy with the Bad Boy logo, right? Which is based upon a form of sacrifice. So now, when you look at this publication, I'm telling you, there's a difference between white hats and black hats. Donald Trump is a white hat, meaning that he's neutral, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's benevolent, right? He's still working with the factions of the United Nations, considering the fact that he signed the National Emergency Declaration for FEMA, to where they basically have control when we have a big casualty, like I was telling you in the beginning of the video, right? They're preparing for a casualty, which is why Donald Trump signed that. Yeah, here we go. He says the United States lawmakers plan for a possible mass casualty event, proposing for a constitutional amendment to replace the members quickly and change various lines of succession in a national crisis. We in that time right now. Something's going to happen because we at the apex of the fourth turning. This is the seculum of a cycle. Something is about to happen because this is the fall of America. Something is about to happen. I keep telling y'all, man. You can feel it in the ether. Something is about to happen. So Donald Trump is a white hat, and the deep state shadow government are black hats, right? That's why I said you got York right versus Scottish right. You got, governmental groups fighting against other governmental groups. So the Scottish right, like I said, they're basically the white caps. York right are basically the black hats. So that is the difference between the two, because all these factions work in synergy. Always remember that everything is connected. Now, when you go to the ancient Vedic Persian language, you got to understand that the V and the D are basically interchangeable, because when I was looking at, this whole concept and these ideologies of Diddy and why he do what he do within the factions of the music industry, the word Diddy comes from the word div, which is a demon, right? And that demon is a supernatural entity all throughout Persian mythology. And that demon is a jinn all throughout Vedic cultures. He's an ugly demon who basically craves power and strength, basically amongst his peers, which is a form of sorcery. So the god Div propagates sorcery and necromancy. So, this is why you got to understand that, people within the music industry, when they become a gatekeeper, they start to be controlled by entities, non-corporeal entities, demons. So that's why I had to, show you that aspect of it. Now, one thing you also got to understand about these celebrities within the factions of the deep state shadow government. Now, celebrities are not voting for future presidents for same reasons that normal people do, but brainwashed a lot of people into thinking that they are highlighting things through virtue signaling, and garner the support of American citizens to side with the entertainers when they mention Donald Trump, misogyny, racism, bigotry. But the celebrities will never tell you they vote for Democrats, because those are the ones who will keep them out of prison. The deep state shadow government, as I was telling you before, those are the ones who basically kept the Jeff Epstein files and closed them and never released them to the public. So this is why you get the great majority, especially black entertainers. They propagate democracy and tell you to vote because it's connected to the 14th Amendment, which is a fraudulent contract. So when you participate in fraud, you can't claim injury to the system. So like I said, this is why it tells you that American citizens side with the entertainers when they mention Donald Trump's misogyny. You got black hats versus the white hats. York right, Scottish right, Democrat, Republic, right? So since we at the apex of a seculum of a cycle, this is where you get a reversal point. So when you go to Matthew 20:16, so the last shall be first and the first shall be last. And that reason that is because everything has to go through a reset process. Because the first were the politicians, the celebrities, the athletes, the drug dealers, the corporate CEO, the socialites, the cool kids. those were the ones that was controlling everything under the Piscean age of darkness, right? That was based upon indoctrination and illusions. Now the ones that came last by not playing the game, we're going to be first. These are the bookworms. These are the quiet ones. These are the introverts. These are the carrying ones. These are the ones who are the empaths, the healers, the chosen ones, right? We are basically going to reverse the polarity of everything that took place in the old timeline. It's our time now. So that's why you got all the CEOs stepping down. Everything is getting exposed because now we are the ones, the truth tellers. We got to come to the forefront. Now, everything that you see taking place right now is part of the timeline of the binary code system of the supercomputer of the energy extraction matrix. And the reason I say that is because that everything is basically premeditated and is acclimated to the simulation. So it's not a coincidence that you had Hurricane Helen around September 27th in 1958. And then there was an extrapical process that took place on September 29th, and they said that it's supposed to hit on September 29th in 2024 because the September 29th is a mirror flip for September 11th because 2 plus 9 equals 11. So who knows that, something might take place within, those dates or whatever, which is why I put out this video, the second moon of September 29th. And it's not a coincidence that Hurricane Helen hit around September 29th in 1958. Not a coincidence. So you got to watch this video right here because it basically coincides with the timeline of eschatology. So for those coming in, I'm going to give a brief rundown about everything that I talked about tonight because, like I said, we're in the final Great Awakening stages. So now, all this stuff works in tandem with the societal and the geopolitical economic reset, which is why the United Nations is mobilizing for global governance. And the reason that is because it works in conjunction with the New World Order system, which is why Bill Gates is preparing for another lockdown or another war. It all coincides with World War III. So this is why the lawmakers basically plan for a possible mass casualty event, proposing a constitutional amendment to replace members quickly and change various lines of succession in a national crisis. Something is about to happen, basically, because you're witnessing the fall of America. The fall of America is the fall of the three city-states that control the better simulation of reality, which is basically the corporate infrastructure of third density, which is comprised of the military and the spiritual monotheistic religion aspects and the financial infrastructure that coincides with Washington, D.C., Vatican City, and the city of London. So this is why you see places like, in D.C. closed down, right? And it's closed down because this is why the deep state shadow government of democracy, these liberals and these politicians, they've been holding all these meetings at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. And it'll show you right here when you look at Diddy's son in the background, it shows you the same monolithic structure in the background. When you look at my cursor right here, he was at a party in Atlanta at Tyler Perry Studios, right? So everything that you're seeing right now in real time is getting exposed. It's getting exposed because they built their system on witchcraft that coincides with governmental ordinance departments that puts you under the false jurisdiction of the United States government to where you're a United States citizen because now you have a social security number and a QSIP number, which is the Community Uniform Security Identification Procedure that works in tandem with the Federal Reserve note that is being controlled by the Commonwealth corporate internal codes. So this is why the planet has to go through a cleansing state. And then that cleansing state is a great purification process where you're going to have troubling times, according to the fourth book of Ezra, from 2024 to the year of 2027, as we lead up into the year of 2030 for the sustainable development goals. So America has to go through a cleansing state in a process of supplication because we've been spiritually cut off because we were civilly dead in the eyes of law because we didn't have the knowledge about who we are mentally, spiritually, and genetically. So, like I said, they built their system upon witchcraft, and the witchcraft aspect of it put an encryption over the planet, which is the sigil of the Infernal Union, which is a Luciferian sigil that basically subjugated the energy of people that coincides with the religion, which is why, you know, the great majority of these people are basically getting exposed. So this is why everything in the music industry is getting exposed. Chris Brown, Little Uzi, all these people were at the Diddy parties, right? And on the dark web, they sold, you know, one of the tapes at Diddy's party that had Chris Brown, Usher, and Nicki Minaj. It got sold for $500 million on the dark web. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you know, we in that time period right now, right? We are in that time period, so that's why it's imperative to get your shit together, right? It's imperative for you to get your shit together right now. We all must come together under one union, because what you're looking at right now is the final stages of the Great Awakening. It's about to go down. A lot of shit is about to go down. It's about to get weird. You know, you had Alexa, she was talking about there's a mobilization of UFO crafts coming to the planet, right? And I'm going to do a video talking about the Crystal City, because it all works in conjunction of what's taking place right now in real time, right? So the deep state shadow government, the black hats, they got to come up with some type of black swan event. They got to come up with some type of orchestrated event to basically propagate this ideology of a new world order by way of the United Nations, right? Because they lost their power. The old systems were being controlled by the factions of, you know, Washington, D.C., the Vatican, and the City of London, who controls, you know, monotheistic religion, the financial infrastructure, and the corporate jurisdiction of the corporate internal codes under commercial law. Everything has to reset. We're going through an economic reset, a geopolitical reset, a societal reset. Because like I said, this is the time where the chosen ones come back to take the planet back. The healers, the true speakers, right? The ones that were basically castigated by society because they said that we was crazy and we conspiracy theories. Now everything is coming to the forefront. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, get this video out there. This video is very important. End of transmission.
10:14. We will put an end to this madness.
It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. Karma's gonna get to you, and then you'll have a chariot with only one less friend. Now I had distant folks that are looking to my eyes to understand the wisdom he's given and his wealth from the skies. So thanks for this meal that I'm about to receive, and thank you for my health and all the good memories. Thanks for the courage taking on another day when I used to not believe, but now I know about grace. Stay away from the fire, cause the flames does burn. Go with your gut feeling. When it's wrong, you learn. For every one step I take, the Lord takes two. And do unto others if you want it done unto you. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. This a completion, the selfish proto-Grecian, Amerindian, Phoenician. I'm the last of the Mohicans, the bastard of the land, the pen, melanin, accretion. And we just trying to get back to the fact that we was kings and queens of a land before the avalanche seized it. I live on Turtle Island with the rest of the diseased. Better than the medicine for 7 different treatments. Niggas try to ride away but end up getting seasick. The sleep can feel my words like Braille, and they're awakened with the penmanship of Hindu script written in them vacant monastery honor. Honorary payments to the prototype. Tomorrow's only a day away, but nothing happens overnight. The fuck's wrong with going left when you know it's right? Biting off more than I can chew, that's an overbite. Black on black crime is like watching 2 soldiers fight when all along they was on the same page. History. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land.